let's talk a little bit about our experience just now. Who's going to be honest and say that the bell woke them up because they dozed off? I saw a few dozing heads. It's okay. It happens. Okay? Okay. Did anybody have a problem with being still? Did you feel like wiggling and you're like, oh man, I gotta stay still? Yeah. Also very common. Oh, and to those of you online, I apologize for the video not starting right off, but I'm glad that you hung with us. And if you do have questions, please address them in the chat box. So it can be easy to let doze off. Those of you who are feeling dozy, were you meditating with your eyes closed? Because that'll usually do it. Okay. You all seem to be sitting really still. That's nice. And as I mentioned with Zen, it's a silence and stillness practice. And so we try to aim for that. And why do we do that? Because if your body is still, maybe your mind will be still. More of a chance. Okay. Anybody have any comments about eyes or what they were doing with their thoughts? Did you have a hard time keeping focused on meditation? Is anybody just often daydreaming? That also happens. Yeah. And you're the only one who's going to know. Because, you know, we're lucky we don't really have visible thought bubbles, so I can't really tell who's daydreaming and who's meditating. But you're going to know, okay? So when you're trying to meditate and you realize, oh man, I was just daydreaming, as soon as you can notice that, just come back to what your focus is, usually the breath, okay? So I want to ask you this. Though you've all pretty much said that you have experience with meditating, why do we meditate? Why does anybody here meditate? Yes.
Well, I meditate to like be still, but also it's like to prepare for it's prepare for death, because like it's to get you able to transition to the other side.
Okay.
So it's like a practice of like transitioning. Like the transition is what terrifies people when it comes to passing away. Going from consciousness to unconscious.
Okay.
And I was writing a book, and it would explain it well for me that like the reason why I help people like to meditate is because it allows you to get into that tranquil spot, you know, that invited spot,
Right.
so that the transition, so if you have practice doing it, when the time does come, the transition seems smooth and seamless.
Okay. All right. Who else here has other reasons why they meditate? Yeah.
And it helps me be more patient with myself and other people and not reactive. Like I don't need to respond to emails or text messages right away. If I'm angered, I just let it pass. And
Right, and sometimes it just teaches us to just take a breath and not react. Yeah. I saw another hand. Why do you meditate? Anybody want to say?
Giving my mind a rest.
Yeah. I will often describe it as giving your mind a vacation, because we're constantly thinking. If you ever notice it, and you may not notice it because we're so used to it, the mind is always going, thinking, all the time. So when we meditate, and you've probably heard this here before, not only from me, but we are training our minds to be in present moment, to have present moment awareness. So what's happening right now? Not a whole lot. You're hearing some sounds, you're sitting. When you're meditating, what's actually happening is you're breathing, and you're trying to just focus on just that thing, okay? Are thoughts going to come up? Absolutely. That's part of it. When you notice the thought, you let the thought go, you come back to the breath. And the more and more you practice it, I would say for most people, it gets easier. I can go through spots like I'm having something right now in my meditation where I'm counting my breaths. I used to just be able to just feel breath in, breath out, and that was fine. But now I'm just like counting because my mind wants to be really busy. So if you're finding you're having a busy mind and you're really trying to meditate and still your mind, you can count your breaths. And I will always challenge you, if you can get to 10, you're a better meditator than I, because people say, oh yeah, I can get to 10. Can you get to 10 without a thought? That's the thing, right? So we're not just like letting our thoughts just go, because the other thing I've discovered is you can count your breath. So you can be either saying you can say this, breath in, breath out, 1. Breath in, breath out, 2. Or you don't have to have the words. You can be going on with that, and also in the back of your mind you can be thinking. That's how determined our minds are to keep busy. So yes, it's definitely giving your mind a break or giving your mind a vacation. And the other thing is you're being present with what's actually going on. So that's why sometimes it's really helpful to be meditating where there's some noise. So you're breathing, you're feeling your breath, you're hearing sounds. That's all that's happening. When we get done, you can go back to your busy mind and make your plans and think your thoughts. And you're going to lapse into it while we're meditating because that's just part of it, especially in the beginning. But even, like for me, I've been doing this for a long time, and for whatever reason, there just are times where my mind is just busy and it doesn't want to settle down. And so I'm just breath in, breath out, 1. Breath in, breath out, 2. And then you notice a little thought. You can almost like feel it wanting to get in there. Just notice it and let go of it. It takes a lot of practice. It's not easy. I'm sure you've heard Jeff say that. Meditation is not easy. And I think Zen practice, because there are no verbal cues. I give you instruction at the beginning. I'm not going to be reminding you, where's your mind? Follow your breath. So it's like you have to just really be in charge of yourself and do that. Okay? Anybody else want to say why they meditate? Does anybody meditate just because it makes them feel calmer? No, that's a common thing. And it doesn't always happen that way. Because if you're having a busy mind and you're having a hard time, then you just might end up feeling more agitated. Yeah.
One thing I was going to say, added on what you were saying about the counting,
Yeah.
is for myself, and probably many people are like this, is that I go, as soon as I catch myself having a thought,
Right.
I'll give myself a hard time and think, oh, I'm not doing this right. And so
Right.
a practice for me is to not go down the rabbit hole of giving myself a hard time, just go straight back to the breath.
Good for you.
Give myself the grace, because it's going to happen regardless.
Right, that's a really good point, and I saw a few people nodding their heads. And the other thing, and so during meditation, you're going to notice your patterns. So when you were giving yourself a hard time, are there other areas in your life that you give yourself a hard time about? Probably. So we start to know ourselves a little bit better by just seeing our patterns in meditation. Or many people, and I certainly have been guilty of this, I'm trying to get to 10, right? Breath in, breath out, 1. And then I'll get to a certain number and a little thought creeps in. I'm like, well, it wasn't much of a thought, so do I really have to start over? Like, oh, do I do that in other parts of my life? Do I bargain with myself? So it can be very illustrative as far as like, oh, this is how I show up? Okay. So we can learn about ourselves. So a lot of people meditate to get calm. Now, there's seated meditation, kind of formal meditation, what we're doing. We're sitting still, we're following our breath. A lot of people just can't, don't want to, don't have the time, have whatever reason, just like, I just cannot do that. Can you be present for 5 minutes? Could you be present, let's say, you turn on the shower, and instead of just thinking, what am I going to do with my day, blah, 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 can you just be present to the feeling of the water, the sound of the water, just your experience, feeling your feet on the floor, so being in present moment, having present moment awareness. You can practice that. But that's all we're doing here. We're having present moment awareness. We're being aware of the present moment. That's it. Okay, so that could be a way to practice. You can also just try sitting and following your breath for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and see how it goes. Okay? All right. The thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was gratitude and appreciation. Particularly when I found out I was going to be leading this class tonight, I thought, well, maybe we could talk about that. One time we talked a little bit about generosity, and people were really hesitant to talk about how or why they're generous. But what I wanted to talk about was gratitude, particularly around the experience of eating. Now, you've heard it probably said, when you're eating, just eat. When you're walking, just walk. When you're driving, just drive. And I've talked about the driving thing. So when you're driving, your automatic instinct might be turn on the radio, whatever. And that's fine, but sometimes practice not turning on the radio and just be present with your drive. Feel your hands on the steering wheel. Just notice what's coming in. Okay, so that's one thing to do. For me, as far as gratitude with meals, I was raised Catholic, and we always had to say grace before each meal. Who else had that experience, whatever religion you were? Just a few of us? Okay. Do any of you remember the prayer that you said? Who remembers? You think you remember it? Can you say it?
Say what we pray.
Yeah, just say what you would say for grace as a kid, or what you say now.
God is great, God is good. Let us thank you for our food. By his hands we shall be fed, giving some of our daily bread.
Okay. Okay, great. The prayer that I had to say was, bless us, Father, for these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty. Through Christ our Lord, amen. Now, Catholic is very wordy and use all these big words. And what I discovered, just like when you're counting your breath, you can be also thinking, you could just rattle off that prayer and not even be thinking about it, okay? So, my suggestion to you is, when you have a meal, try having a meal in silence. Has anybody ever had a meal in silence without an iPad or being on their phone or reading? Just silence, what is that like for you, Dana, when you do that?
At the beginning, it feels very forced.
Uh-huh.
And then I start to notice the flavors of food or the texture
Right.
more, and then thoughts like, well, this is boring. And then, kind of let go of that, just like in meditation, let go of thoughts and keep coming back to the experience of eating.
That's a great experience. Yeah, that's a good example. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
When I do that, I eat slower, and I notice the flavors too, versus like if you sit in front of the TV or if you're talking to somebody. So I prefer to eat quietly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Because for the most part, we just eat while we're thinking. Maybe we don't even. Does anybody remember what they had for breakfast this morning? Good. That's good. And if you eat the same thing every morning, that's not fair. So I was thinking this morning. Okay, so I'm going to read this little verse when I've gone on extended retreats where you could have maybe 3 days in silence where there's no talking and the meals are in silent, and so you have your food, and before we would eat anything, we would say this, and I'm going to explain this. It's going to sound very like Zen-y, or you're going to be like, what? But let's see what we can get out of it. So we start this way. First, 72 laborers brought us this food. May we know how it comes to us. So I want to just make a comment about that. 72 laborers? So I was thinking about my oatmeal this morning. I have this oatmeal, right? So what were all the things that happened before I got that oatmeal in my bowl? Someone had to plant the oats. Someone harvested them. Someone processed them. Someone packaged them. Someone put them on a truck somewhere. Someone drove that truck to the store. Someone unloaded them. The person at the grocery store maybe handed them to me. So there's a lot in that. Now that's not 72, but that's a good number to think about. This also brings up interconnectedness. Nothing just comes out of thin air. There's a lot of steps that happen, okay? So we start with first 72 laborers brought us this food. So when you have let's say tomorrow morning when you have your breakfast, just think about it. Just be not only grateful, like, man, I'm fortunate. I have food to eat. Not everybody has that. Some people are sleeping out on the sidewalk and it's raining, and they don't have any food, but I have food. So gratitude for it, but also when it says, may we know how it comes to us, like how did it get there? Just think about the process of that. Second, as we receive this food, let us consider whether we appreciate its nature. So again, all the many people that had a hand in it. Third, to experience the natural order of mind, we must first be aware of our greed. So when we're eating and just gobbling our food, or maybe we're taking more and we're not even still hungry. So greed is something we don't want to really be practicing. We do anyway, but we have to be aware of it, okay? Fourth, to support our life, we take this food. So why are we actually eating? To support our life, okay? Yes, it's also pleasurable and enjoyable and all of that, but the basic reason why we're taking food is so we can stay alive. Fifth, to attain the way we take this food. So the way meaning the way of enlightenment, of being awake. What the Buddha said was, what does Buddha mean? Means awakened being, okay? First, this food is for compassionate practice. We want to be compassionate. Second, it is for our teachers, families, communities. So sometimes when you're about to eat something, you can just make a silent offering, like I just offer the nourishment from this food to others, maybe who don't have anything. Third is for all of those who suffer without, as I had mentioned. Thus, we eat this food with everyone. So when we're eating, probably a lot of other people are eating too, so we're in community whether or not we realize it. We eat to stop all harming, to practice serving, and to aspire to the awakened way. So that's kind of like, like a lot of Zen flowery words, but it's an opportunity to pause, and you don't have to do it this way, you don't have to say grace. You can just have some gratitude, just take a breath. Sometimes you can just pick up, let's say you have a bowl of oatmeal or you have whatever it is, you can just pick it up and appreciate the aroma, the color, the textures, the taste, as Dana said. So it's just a different thing to do. Has anyone ever eaten in silence, let's say at some kind of a retreat or some kind of a structured thing? Yeah, what was that like for you?
It was hard at first.
Yeah.
But after a while, it was like noise pollution. You didn't want to hear anything. The radio, after we left the retreat, we turned the radio on, it was just so loud.
Yeah.
But it was nice. It was really peaceful and clear. And
Yeah, it's just a focus, like Dana was saying, it's kind of like meditating, it's hard at first, and you lose your focus, and you want to just daydream, and we're just training our minds to do something different. Derwin, what about you? Have you done silent eating in retreats?
Yeah, but there was also involved chanting.
Oh, there's chanting too,
I
okay.
went along with it.
Mhm.
Chanting, then silent,
Okay.
and then chanting again at the end.
Okay.
It was good.
Yeah, so silence is, it can be hard for us as Americans to appreciate it, to even like it. This type of meditation, as I mentioned, I'm not coaxing you along, I'll remind you of the instructions before we do our second sit, but it's silence and stillness, and after a while, you get to appreciate the silence. And the distractions, maybe not so much. Although a distraction, let's say a sound, can bring you back to your breath. So again, it's present moment awareness is really what we're striving for. If you like to practice sitting in silence, I've said this before, in the mornings here, during the weekdays from 8 to 8:25 and 8:30 to 9, there's 2 sittings. In silence, there's just somebody ringing a bell, and you could do that, and also at the noontime hour. And then also, once a month, for Saturday of the month, there's a 4-hour sit. So if you like this type of sitting, and try it. It's not so easy, but it's not doable, okay? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and sit again for a little bit more. And so just pick your posture, commit to it, try to be still. Decide how you're going to have your eyes. Are they going to be cast down? Are they going to be closed all the way? I would encourage you not to just be looking around, but try to have some internal focus, okay? And what are you going to do with your thoughts when they come up? If anybody thinks they're not going to have thoughts, you are, okay? So follow your breath, maybe breath in, breath out. You notice a thought, oops, go back to your breath, okay? All right. right, comments. Did anyone find the second sitting easier than the first, harder? Dana, you found it easier? Okay. So you found your mind settle down more?
Yeah, and I found, I realized the first time that I was just dozing off.
Uh-huh.
So this time I was very conscious about, I can't vaguely see my hands.
Yeah, right. That's another thing you can do is actually have, ground yourself with the touch sensation. So breath and sound and touch. And you can kind of run through that. Okay. Did anybody find the second meditation harder because you're already getting antsy and wanting to go? When is this going to be over? Anybody have that? And there goes Art. Bye.
I also found that instead of the thoughts, thoughts are always coming in and out,
Sure.
but I found that when you try to just think of thoughts, you try to just think of thoughts, instead of you come in, I guess you try to think of them,
Uh-huh.
the thoughts actually tend to disappear.
Okay. All right. Most people find that they just happen and then, oh, there's a thought, without our awareness or anything we were trying to do. Okay. Did anybody switch from eyes closed to eyes open because they were getting drowsy? No? You did, okay. Did that help?
Yeah, the counting really helped me.
Oh, good. Oh, the counting helped you. Oh, that's good. Yeah, and the other thing that Dana mentioned that I hadn't, because a lot of people don't like to have too many things to think about, but if you can focus on the sensation of breath in and out, maybe notice sounds, and then maybe just also notice your hands touching your lap. Those can be three things. So those things are happening. So but you just don't want to have too much verbal chatter because we do that all the time. Okay. All right. So let's all join palms for transfer of merit. So may any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be at peace. Thank you all for sharing your practice. And before you head out, Meredith is our Dharma Bump host for tonight, and she has a few announcements.
Hello everyone, I'm tonight's host Meredith. We opened the Dharma Bump Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. If you would, please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.